Welcome to Inspired Nonprofit Leadership, where you'll hear insights and useful strategies, as well as lessons learned from other nonprofit leaders and valuable tips from a variety of experts. Here to help you with the challenges and opportunities you face day after day is your host and nonprofit leadership expert, Sarah Olivieri.
Hello, nonprofit leaders, and welcome to your go-to place for information and inspiration to help you be even more effective. I'm your host, Sarah Olivieri, and you're listening to Inspired Nonprofit Leadership. My guest for this episode is Lidia Varesco Racoma, a designer out of Chicago who empowers organizations and entrepreneurs to make a change through strategic branding and marketing design. With over 2 decades of experience, Lidia is known not only for her ability to express a client's mission, but also for her friendly, approachable working style. She is a blogger, a speaker, and leads branding and creative marketing workshops for nonprofits and small businesses all over the world. Lidia is active in the nonprofit and marketing communities, currently serving as communications committee for AMA Chicago as graphics manager, as well as a co-chair of the marketing and communications committee for the Association of Consultants to Nonprofits, with a past position on the board there. She has also served as the association's forum's content working group as a content creator. And Lidia's company, Lidia Varesco Design, is a certified women-owned business. And I believe you recently renewed that and have celebrated 20 plus years. This says in November 2020. So you are going on 24, 25 years, quarter of a decade. So great to have you, Lidia. Before we dive into our topic, will you just tell us a little bit about yourself personally?
Yes, thank you. Well, gosh, that was a really great intro. That really covered it all. But yeah, as you mentioned, I have been working in nonprofit work for decades. So when I started out my design career as an intern at a design studio. That's where I first kind of discovered this love of nonprofit work, and took a few diversions along the way. But after I launched my business, I really kind of dove into that as a focus. Um, Having kids along the way as well really just kind of cemented that focus to work with organizations who are making a difference and basically making a better world for my kids.
Excellent. I love it. Well, today we're going to be talking about brand guides. So let's just start out with the basic question. What's a brand guide?
Yes. So a brand guide is basically an overview of your organization's branding, and it covers everything from the graphic look and feel to the overall voice and tone. And it is really a document. It's a living thing. Um, Nowadays, most of us have them somewhere on a drive or it's a PDF form. Not as many have them printed out, but it's basically a place where everyone can go to reference all of the aspects of the brand. Like I mentioned, from the logo to the colors to the messaging to the elevator pitch, everything is in one place. So it really assures that whoever's working with the brand, from the internal team to external partners to supporters, donors, even everybody is expressing that brand in a consistent and accurate way.
Yeah, a great summary. I used to run a marketing agency and we built brand guides and I've used them, such a helpful tool in so many ways, but I'm going to let you enumerate, like, why would you want, this document, cuz that doesn't really sound very exciting, right? Document, but it's really really useful. So tell us why you need one.
Yeah, definitely. And it does seem sort of like a boring thing to do and to have, but they're so important and life changing. Like I always, when I work with my clients and we put together a really great comprehensive brand guide, they're like, oh my gosh, I look at this thing, at least weekly, if not every day. So it really is crucial mainly for consistency. And that's one thing that a lot of clients come to me is to sort of help them with their consistency. Because, over time, the marketing and communications materials, they start to feel really different, disjointed, and maybe you have one designer work on this piece and someone else work on this piece, and this one was made in house, and everything starts to look different. So having a brand guide really helps with that consistency because this way whether it's your in-house team creating a piece or you're working with someone like me, an outside mentor, you are assured that there is consistency in your brand, both the visuals and the messaging. So that's the first one, number one. Second would be efficiency. So having that definitely, you can make things happen faster. If someone says, "Oh my goodness, I forgot we need to create this ad for this directory listing or something," it's so much easier when this is the logo we're using, these are our colors, this is our blurb, so having everything in one place means you can get things done a lot faster. Um, then also it's for accuracy. A lot of times, like I've heard of this happening where, you go and have something printed and it's the wrong color because we didn't know what our brand color was, or we gave them the wrong logo. So that's really important too, is to make sure that you are using, first of all, the correct logo, the correct, brand fonts and colors, as well as the messaging. The messaging is on point and accurate and not, kind of going off script. And lastly, it's really a useful tool for onboarding. So if you have new team members joining the organization, even vendors, like I've had, if they have one, I will ask my clients to send me their brand guide so I can look at it. I can familiarize myself. So it's a great tool when someone new joins the team. They can look through it, they can familiarize themselves, and they can just kind of hit the ground running.
Yeah, I love that. And so true. I've used brand guides like anytime I hire a contractor, someone to do some design work, like a short project, you can bypass so many communication errors and missteps and revisions just by
Yeah,
having that brand guide ready to go. I know when I used to do
absolutely.
branding and websites, we just build in the page for everybody on their website, not listed on the menu, but just if you went to their website forward
Mhm.
slash brand dash guide, you were going to get it. So it was
Yep.
really easy for them to
Mhm.
share and use as, like you said, a living document because things change, right?
Yep.
As people evolve.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And, nowadays, most of the brand guides that I put together, we also will include design templates. So, for example, Canva templates for most often used pieces. So it might be, the flyer, the banner, the sponsorship packet, social media graphics, and those things will change or maybe, needs will change. So a lot of times nowadays, I'm creating brand guides that are not just a PDF that, might need to be edited, but it might be something like in a Google Drive, So this way, if my client says, "Oh my goodness, we forgot that we have this document that we use often." Okay, we can add that to our design template and it's updated in real time. So it really is like that living and breathing document that changes over time.
Okay, so I have so many questions. Of course, I've used brand guides, but I want to go in for those people who are, catching up to all the awesomeness about the brand guide. Just take me through like what goes in it. Exactly. We're
Yes,
thinking like,
definitely.
I'm gonna
So,
get one, but what am I getting? Or maybe they're thinking about hiring someone to do one and they're wondering like, is this
mhm,
person gonna give me the good so what should people be expecting?
yes, definitely. So we'll talk about first the key, kind of the essential element. So there's three parts to it. So there's the organizational aspect, the positioning and messaging, and then the visual
Mm,
aspect.
mhm.
So the organizational aspect of the guide is your organizational goals, your mission and vision. Those are really important because we want to make sure everything's aligned. So your mission and vision are aligned with your goals, and everything's aligned with your brand expression. So that's kind of the beginning part of the guide to sort of set the tone. And then next, I'll have the positioning and messaging. So that's where we go into how is your brand positioned? How are you expressing it through your messaging? So that would include your brand's identity and name, your audience personas. So that's basically the audience that you work with. And that really details everything about that audience. That's a really important part of the guide. And then from that, then we develop the brand positioning. So that's basically the who, what, and why of your brand. That ends up being maybe a couple, usually at least a couple of paragraphs. It's an internal document. It's not something like a mission and vision that you put on, for everyone to see. So it's very detailed, includes a lot of keywords, and is really kind of the heart of your brand messaging. And then also, I always like to include core values. Those are usually, one word, maybe a short phrase, key messaging points, maybe a couple of key points. Your voice, that's always really important to outline, especially if you're working with writers, content creators, so that they know how to write your voice. And then keywords. I always have a list of keywords. Those are great for, for SEO, of course, but also again, just to kind of establish the tone and voice of your brand.
I love it.
And then the visual part of
Well,
the
can
guide,
I
that
interrupt
is
you for
kind
a
of,
moment?
oh, sure.
Before we go into the
Uh-huh.
visuals, can you just give us a little example for those people who are new to this? Like, what does it sound like when you talk about like I want to ask you both about brand positioning and voice, because I think a lot of people haven't had this
Yeah.
work done for them. So can you just kind of give us an example or
Yeah.
take us in so that people can really kind of get a vision in their head of what that sounds like or looks like?
Definitely. So brand positioning, like I mentioned, my framework is basically the who, what, and why of your brand. So who you work with, what you provide, what problems you solve, and then why, what's the reason that your organization even exists. So to kind of summarize, my brand positioning verbatim, but it would be like Lidia Varesco Design works with, mission focused organizations to empower them to share their brand through branding and marketing design, uh, through her, experience working with nonprofits and associations, on both sides of the fence, as a working internally for an association as well as serving them as, as a factor, she is able to help them, achieve this goal. So basically that was kind of in a nutshell my who, so I'm working with this particular group of audience segment. My what is I'm helping to empower them to express their brand and their vision. And my why is really that, experience that I've had, like I said, kind of on both sides, understanding the nonprofit and association world from both sides of the story. So that was major, summarization. It would be much longer, but yeah, basically that who, what, and why. And the why is in my opinion, the really important part because that's the part that helps you stand out. Um, helps people to resonate with you and your work. So for a nonprofit, the why would be, was there a catalyst that the founder went through an experience and that's why they created this organization, or did they see a problem they wanted to solve? So that's really that why portion is really important.
Yeah, and so many founders have great stories, especially. And
Yes.
brand voice, I was just quickly looking up. I have a brand voice
Yes.
for me and for my company. So do you have a great example you can share? Or
Yeah.
I'm happy to share one of mine so people can hear too. You
Yeah.
tell me.
Definitely. So my brand voice is basically friendly, um, informational, and supportive. So in all of my outreach, anybody that follows me like on LinkedIn or, anywhere else in my social, like I'm always very friendly. I'm, talking about my life, my experiences. I'm offering a lot of resources and I'm also supporting like, hey, you can do this. I want to help you do this. So those are kind of like my key words, as part of my voice. And that's how I put it together. But you could write it as a sentence up and let's hear yours actually. How yours.
Sure. Well, I have kind of two, more in the professional tone. Sarah's tone, the tone of Sarah's communication is optimistic, encouraging, and professional. She speaks with confidence and enthusiasm, which instills a sense of trust and possibility. Her tone is also inclusive, making her audience feel understood and supported. And I also have another one that I like that I just wrote for somebody. It was like a quick communication. I called it the brand vibe. And it says
Uh-huh. Oh, I like
positive
that.
energy, but warm, not hyper. Think French ochre, not hot pink. um, uh,
I love it. I love it.
yeah,
And that's a good also, it's kind of like creating like a brand guardrail.
yeah,
Like we are this and not this.
yeah. Because I've had
So that's a great way
people,
to frame
yeah,
it.
I've had people take my energy and interpret it as like pink and yellow bubbles all over the place. And I'm like, no, No, that's not me.
Right.
I'm energetic in a different kind of way. So,
Yes,
yeah, I love it.
that's
I
great.
love it.
I love it. Yes. What a great way to explain voice.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Okay, so we talked about what are the key parts, but we didn't get to visual yet. So go ahead and dive
Oh,
into that.
yeah. Yes. So visual, this is my favorite part. I, started out as a visual, graphic designer before I went into more, strategy and that type of work. So this is always my favorite part. And this is kind of what people think of when they think of a brand guide. They think like, oh, that's where your logo lives.
Yeah.
But, we know there's many other things that live there, but it is also where your logo lives. So yes, of course, logo, your brand's typography. So, the fonts that you're using. And I like to include both print-based fonts and digital fonts.
Mm.
So, nowadays, a lot of us, we're using Canva, we're using PowerPoint, so I try to make sure I include fonts that can be used in all those different
That's
applications. That's
such a good point. I just want to highlight that for people because if you let a designer just pick any font, you get into some difficult
yeah,
situations. So I used to tell people like, stick with something that's a Google font that's readily available.
yeah,
Look at the tools you're using. Like Canva is
exactly.
pretty widespread, but it doesn't have everything. You can pretty
Mhm.
much guarantee a website can use Google fonts. But some of the other
Yep.
tools, like I use a tool called Miro, and they have a very limited
Mhm.
font selection. So I used to build my slides in there, and I was frustrated that even though I picked a really common font, I used Lato only. They didn't
Right,
have it.
right. Yes.
And that was frustrating that they didn't have it. So now I use Canva, and partly because I like Canva's presentation slide system, but also because Miro,
Mhm.
I had to you choose a different font for all my slides than my standard font, and that was
Right.
frustrating.
Oh my gosh. The struggle is real.
It is real.
Let me tell you. But if you have a pro account with Canva, you can upload your brand.
Yes. Yeah, I
So I
realize
always
that.
steer people in that direction. And nonprofits can get the discount at Canva to get that pro account because it's really important. Like I was just working on a design template for one of my clients in Canva and I noticed it was the wrong font. I was like, oh my goodness, how long has this font been here? It's the wrong one. I had to change it. And it was a minor, the average person wouldn't have noticed. But in the grand scheme of things, like you really do want to have that
Yeah.
we talked
I
about. So
I
it's
think,
really important
you
to
said
have that
something
fun.
like designers notice, like, the detail, and they're like, "Oh my god." But I think for those other
Right.
people, it's like, they might not be like, "Oh, that's, Arial instead of whatever, Open Sans," but other people might get tripped up for a second, and anytime you have that
Yes,
hesitation of, "Wait, am I in the right place?" That kind of level of trust
exactly.
or that flow, like, imagine if they were going through to make a donation, and all of a sudden they've gone from one
Mhm.
page to another in the process, and the font is different, they might go, "Oh, did I click on something wrong? Am I getting,
Yes,
scammed?" And that has a real impact.
exactly. Am I in the right place? And that's, I think I wrote a blog about, making sure that your donation page is branded
Mhm.
because exactly if they go to your donation page it's using completely different fonts, different colors, doesn't have your logo, they're like, where am I? Same organization, legit, are they professional? So yeah, it really does that consistency shine through. And now that most of our communications are digital. I mean, of course, nonprofits, they're still doing their appeals that are printed and their annual reports. But probably the majority of the content is being consumed digitally somehow, whether it's on social media, online. So it really is so important that we have that consistency. And it's easy to go into Canva and go crazy, with fonts and colors and stock photos and stuff. So yes, having that brand guide saying, no, read it in, use these fonts, like you can still have fonts, of course, but definitely, yeah, super important. And color. So that brings us to color palette.
Yep, tell us
And
of the
that's the other
colors.
word that
Mhm.
is so important. And, I think with most brands, you have those key, maybe you have like 2 to 4 key colors, in your logo. Um, and that's great. And then you hopefully also have a secondary palette. And, generally when I'm creating for you, we have those key logo colors, and then we have maybe a set of like neutral colors that are used as backgrounds. And then maybe we have some accent colors that are used sparingly. Because again, now with digital design, you need more colors, like back when we were just doing printed materials. Yeah, 4 colors is enough for a brochure. You have 4 colors in your logo that you're using. But now if you're using kind of those same colors in every post and you're posting every day, it starts to get a little tired, boring. So I always try to make sure people have an expanded color palette with those main colors and then some sort of either neutral colors, background colors, accent colors, that all are very complementary and go well together.
Yeah, I love
So that's our next aspect. And then also any graphic elements. So if your logo contains some sort of icons, that's an important thing to have in your brand guide as far as maybe how you want to use those. Any other sort of graphic elements, rules, boxes, that type of thing. It's good to have establish, a system. And then any sub-brands that you might have. So if your organization has, other organizations within them, we want to make sure those are included. And then lastly, as we talked about earlier, those marketing templates.
Mm.
So if your designer that you're working with has created kind of a format for maybe flyers, banners, posters, all of those should also be in the brand guide. And usually what I do is I just link it directly to Canva. So this way, whoever's working on it, they can click it. They're right in Canva. They can access the template. You could also, store templates somewhere on the drive. But the key with the brand guide is making everything easy. So
Yes.
maybe where the page that shows your logos, you have a link that takes you to Google Drive where all the logos are stored. And then, like I said, with the marketing template, that takes you to Canva or again, Google Drive. So the key is always just keep everything in one place. Everybody can access it and you make it easy and simple for the whole team.
Excellent. Well, we're going to take a quick break to hear from our sponsor. And then I have some more questions, especially around making that brand guide accessible. Today's episode is being brought to you by Pivot Ground, spelled as one word, which is in my brand guide, which I created to assist people like you, executive directors, board members, and other nonprofit leaders. I want to help you unleash your full potential and advance the missions that I know you care about so deeply. I've been an executive director, a board member, a secret toilet fixer, and now I'm a consultant and coach. I know your challenges firsthand, and I want to bring you information, inspiration, encouragement, and support to help you make the biggest impact possible. So my gift for you is a weekly newsletter, a short one, where you can get weekly tips on how, for leaders like you, on how to run your organizations better. You can access it by going to pivotground.com/sign up, and there will be a link in the show notes as well. All right, let me get back to my conversation with Lidia. We're talking about brand guides and how helpful they can be. So my next question for you is, you've been doing this a long time. How have you seen brand guides evolve over the years? Like, what are you doing now that you didn't do 15 years ago?
Yes, definitely. So that takes me to, we went through the essentials. So now we talk about some of those additional brand guide elements, So as you're growing your guide, you can add some of these other things that are really, helpful, useful that you'll see, as you start to use it, you'll realize, oh, we need this and that. So one of the things, as you talked about, making things more accessible, more inclusive language guidelines. So that's something we were not doing that years ago. I mean, this is really these past few years, I think is when people like creatives like myself, especially, we learned so much about how we could do things better. And that's one thing that, I recommend to people, depending on who your audience is, who you're working with, you want to make sure that when you're speaking to your audience, that they feel welcomed, they feel seen, you're speaking to them, using terminology that they relate to. So that's a really important one that definitely, even maybe 5 years ago, people were not necessarily thinking about that as being part of their brand guide. And then also having writing guidelines is important. I think nowadays more organizations are doing content marketing. They're doing blogs, they're doing guest posts, and having those guidelines for your writing style, your tone, the formatting you use, maybe, having a few examples. That's really important as well if you're going to be, having other people talk about your organization.
Yeah, yeah.
And then along those lines, having a social media brand guide. And that's, you're taking elements from your main brand guide, but it's kind of condensing it for social media. And again, that's something that it almost turns into like a little mini toolkit. So that could have like your social media marketing mission statement, again, your colors and your fonts that you're using, some of the themes that you talk about, examples of the types of posts you do. If you're doing video content, maybe again, that tone and voice that you want people to use. And then again, that can be part of the guide and then also standalone. So say you're working with like an influencer or you're doing kind of like a takeover of your feed. You could provide that to them and then they could, you know, wear a shirt in your brand color to do something fun or, they can be sure to be using the right tone of voice that aligns with your brand or maybe, specific topics. So they're not kind of going a completely wrong direction. So those are all really important things that we were definitely not thinking about, like I said, even 5 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. I think, two things that you made me think of. Well, one is years ago when I set my brand color, and now I have a color palette for Pivot Ground and a separate color for myself. Is it was a tip from an entrepreneur to just coordinate all your clothes. So I
Yeah.
only buy clothes in my brand colors. That's for
Yes.
clothes that I wear when I'm not working. And so one,
Right.
all my
Right.
clothes, and I'm gonna guess that that lovely yellow you're wearing, and that I see in your background is very likely to be one of your core
Right.
colors,
Right.
right?
It is in one of my accent colors.
Yeah, yeah,
Yes.
and I have this color, you'll see it on pivotground.com's website, it's kinda one of my primary dark colors. So everything coordinates, and then, like,
Mhm.
psychologically working from home, I will change out of a brand color clothing item and put on a totally non-brand color item to, like, trigger myself of, "I am not working anymore, I'm out of work mode, that part's done." So you definitely made me think about
I
that.
love
It is
that.
not silly. People really do this, color coordinate your palette, especially if you're an executive director or anybody who's like forward facing.
Yes.
And if all your clothes, it makes shopping easier too. When you're like, oh, that's not in my
It
palette. I don't
does.
even have to consider that, right?
Exactly. Yes. I have, my key colors are kind of a dark teal and sort of a coral, orangey coral. So yeah, same thing. I buy a lot of clothes in that color because it really is. And people remember,
Yeah.
like I remember once I attended a session with someone and she talked about that kind of personal branding through the colors that you wear, or even, the jewelry that you wear, what you have in your background. Like I've chosen specifically, design posters that I
Mhm.
have, typography in particular, because that's what I love. And so it really is about creating also that personal brand. So I like how you said, like an executive director, they could, think about like, what is our brand about? And then what am I about as it relates to my brand,
That's right.
So it's kind of a fun way to, like you said, to think about like, well, what color am I going to wear today? Then people remember it, or they notice it and they remember it.
That's right. It looks good. The other thing that you made me think about, as I was, I told you I pulled up this little brand voice guide, which the most recent version I have of it was developed or reconfigured to feed to ChatGPT. And I think that's, we
Ah,
used to use it, right, to
mm,
delegate to people who we were hiring, but in a way, we're all hiring AI to do some work for us, and it
right.
doesn't give us great results if we don't, I know one AI person I know, she talks about seasoning your
Yes.
AI tool, right? And so, it works way better when you can feed it a brand guide,
Yes.
tell it what to say, what not to say, what tone, and the material that comes up with, and you give it to it once in bulk and kind of save it. And
Yep.
then you get much better results from those tools, just like you would a human.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. You can say, here's my brand positioning. And I've done this, when I have used Chat GPT, I've, done that. Like, here's the positioning, here's the voice, here are some keywords, and then, write me a blurb or, so it really, maybe again, probably won't be perfect, but at least it's better than just saying, write me a blurb, for
That's
this
right. That's
organization,
right.
given it so much more background.
Yeah,
So, yes, I love
absolutely.
that.
Well, we're pretty much at time. Any final words you want to tell people as they think about, if they're going, oh my God, I want a brand guide, or I have one, but it doesn't sound like the kind of awesome, usable thing like Lydia's talking about. Where can people get more information, and what words of wisdom would you leave them with?
Yes. So first I would say if it's feeling overwhelming, which I know it can, start small. So, you can have like with some of my clients, I create, just like a logo style guide or, an identity guide. And you can just have your logo, your fonts, your colors. You can start simple, start small. And like we said, this is a, living document. So you can add to it, as you can. Just add aspects of it, get together with the team, and here, let's add a little bit more, let's add a little bit more. But yeah, start small. Like, don't let yourself get overwhelmed. Um, Start with that style guide, that logo guide. And I have some resources that I've shared with you,
Yep,
Sarah.
we're going to put them all in the
One
show
is
notes.
specifically perfect. What is a guide to creating a brand guide? So it really walks you through the steps. So it goes over those key categories. It even has a checklist. So that's a great place to start as well. But it's easy. You can DIY the solution. You can partner with someone, but just to have one.
Yeah.
Have a brand guide.
Have one. And I want to put in a plug for at some point working with someone outside of your organization, because it's one of those
Yes.
things like, what you see in the mirror of yourself is not really the best representation, as opposed to having someone give you from the outside, give you that perspective, because it's really hard to see ourselves, and it's so much easier for someone
Mhm.
from the outside to get it quickly and help you, package that up so the rest of the world can see your best side. I love that.
It's true. It's true. And I've seen, when I do strategy sessions with clients, they have those aha moments, where they're like, oh my gosh, we didn't realize this. We didn't notice this. We never had the time to sit down and think about this. So yes, I do encourage, organizations to maybe just have, that logo guide, try to set aside the time, the budget, to go through that whole strategy and have that full guide. Because it really is, like I said, I know because clients have told me this is great. I use this all the time. And it's a really important tool to have in your marketing and communication toolbox.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's been my pleasure to have you, Lydia. And thank you out there for listening, but also for all that you do to make our communities better. Take care of yourself, take time for self care, make some time to get an awesome brand guide in place, and be sure to subscribe and listen to the next episode of Inspired Nonprofit Leadership. Until then, all the best.
You've been listening to Inspired Nonprofit Leadership. Thanks so much for tuning in. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single episode or the bonus episodes. And while you're at it, please leave a rating and review, and be sure to share with your friends and colleagues. Tune in every week for more useful insights and wisdom on nonprofit leadership. Thanks so much for all you do for the communities you serve. Until next time, all the best.